Thanks. Okay, we've got a couple of people coming in, which is nice. And we'll start very shortly, but welcome everybody. If you were here in the last reporting webinar, welcome back. Otherwise, we had done a reporting webinar for marketing reports well, 2 weeks ago, I think it was. So if you're interested in watching that one as well, we should have that recording on our website, bbdboom.com, if you are wanting to learn more about marketing reports, but today we will be focusing on sales. I think we can just get started.
Great. Great.
Nice. All right. Well, welcome everybody who's here and coming in. Today we are doing a very fun lunchtime webinar at BBD Boom. So me, Clarinda, and Katie, we're going to be talking about reports based on our experience with working with clients and also some cool reports that we've discovered along the way. We're also going to be telling you a bit of some like beginner-friendly advice on how to build reports if you're new to it. But if you are experienced, we also will be talking about some advanced reporting that you can set up in HubSpot. So stay tuned for that. So I'm just going to start right off with introductions. So Katie and I are both solutions leads at BBD Boom. So we work with clients a lot, and reporting is definitely a big aspect of HubSpot in general. So just starting with myself, my official title is HubSpot strategist, but basically what we do is we help clients use HubSpot in the best way possible so that it works for the way their business runs. Yeah, and my job is to just see that through and provide strategic advice to enable that to happen. Now, we also have Katie Townsend on the call. Her official title is acquisitions consultant, but she actually pretty much does the same thing as me. But Katie, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work quite a lot on the marketing side, I would say. So doing campaigns, optimization, and then the other side of my job is basically HubSpot. So providing strategic advice, mapping out client strategies, and then overseeing the implementation of that in HubSpot to make sure that clients' processes are working efficiently in a way that they're going to meet their goals. So I sort of work across marketing and sales.
Yeah, I'd say same for me as well. That those are definitely our most common projects, and they're a lot of fun anyway, so I don't mind doing them at all. But that's why we have all these webinars, because we really want to talk about them. So thanks, Katie. And so yeah, today's agenda is very sales reporting focused, and this is kind of what we'll be walking through today. If anyone does have any questions while we're talking, feel free to drop them in the Q&A bit, and then we can answer them at the end. Although if I do see some in between, I'm happy to kind of answer them as much as we can as well. So I am supposedly the host of this webinar, and Katie's kind of our guest, but really we're just really going to be exchanging ideas the whole time. But yeah, so we're going to start off with an overview of sales reporting, just sharing with you what you can do in HubSpot, and also just show you a little bit more about the different things you can do. Then we'll move on to sales process, which Katie will talk a little bit more about, you know, how to make sure that you are prepping your CRM system for the best reports you can build. Then we'll do a bit of a demo through the Sales Hub reporting library, some analytics as well, and some custom reporting. And then we'll move on to more advanced reporting techniques, which Katie will be sharing with us on. And we'll also talk about some of our experience building these types of advanced report with some clients. Then after that, we'll end it off with some kind of tips on sales reports. If you're a beginner, how do you start thinking about what reports you need to build? How do you organize those reports? And what do you need to ensure you're doing in HubSpot before you can build the reports that you want? And then if we do have any time at the end, we will have some Q&As if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we will be providing you with some resources and contact information if you did want to reach out to us about specific questions after that. So I hope you enjoy this webinar and we can get started. So Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit more about sales reporting in HubSpot?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's various different reports that you can create and different ways that you can create those reports. So Clarinda will be showing you in a second some of the different templates that they've got available in the reports library, which I think are a really good place to start if maybe you're new to reporting or you're not really sure how you want your report to look and you just want to browse some of the template options. If you do have a clear idea in mind and you've got really specific requirements, I always recommend starting from scratch. And there's essentially 5 different types of reports available depending on your package. So you'll see them on the right there in that screenshot. So we've got single object, which is really useful if, for example, you just want to report on your contacts or just deals and that's it. So this is the most basic type of report, which is a really good starting point if you are a beginner. The next one that you've got, which is my favorite, is the custom report builder. The reason I like this is because it allows you to connect up to 5 data sources. So this could be, for example, contacts and deals or companies and deals, but you can also add in extra things as well. So on the sales side, that might be looking at deals against their tasks or against the activities that you've completed, such as calls or meetings. So this is a really useful way to get a bit of a bigger picture because you can connect so many different data sources. Customer journey reports is an enterprise feature which allows you, on the marketing side, it's more around seeing the interactions that somebody has taken with you throughout their journey. But I'm going to be showing an example later on in the webinar where HubSpot's now allowing you to add deal stages into those reports. So it's quite cool. Useful. Yeah, it's really cool because you can see the conversion rates between different pipelines and different stages. So I'll be sharing some tips on that later. You've also got attribution and funnel reports as well. So attribution reports is really useful, particularly on the sales side, because you can see what activities or what interactions, what sources drove the most deals to be created, but also what drove the most revenue. So it's quite useful for the sales team to then communicate with marketing and say, okay, look, we're getting loads from this campaign.
Yeah.
This is where we need to focus our budget. So it's really useful for creating that alignment between the two teams.
100%.
And then the last one, you've got funnel reports, and this is quite useful. This is sort of a less advanced version of the customer journey reports and useful if you don't have an enterprise subscription for seeing the conversion rates between your different stages in your pipeline.
Yeah.
But I'd always just say, before you go in and start creating reports, make sure you've got a clear sort of idea in mind and a clear objective for what it is you want to see, because Clarinda and I were saying we often see loads of clients that just go in, everyone's got full access to create and edit. They end up creating their own dashboards, their own reports, and it gets messy very quickly. So I think if you've got a clear goal in mind, it's easier to create that alignment and keep that consistency as well. So,
and that's something we'll kind of mention throughout the webinar. It's just like how you organize your reports, and so that it doesn't get too overwhelming and also just really hard to clean up over time. So that consistency, that's so important. Moving on to kind of setting up your sales process for reporting success.
Yeah, so another point again about data, you're going to get sick of hearing this, but as you know, data can come from loads of different channels. I think even more so on the sales side, because it could come from sales reps manually inputting contact details. Data could come from the email extension or the meeting tool if you've got your calendar connected. Might come from imports that you're doing from purchase data, for example. Could come from form submissions. There's so many different ways. And I think if you're not making sure that things are in the right format, it can get very messy, and then it can be very difficult to report on them in the future. So a common example I always use for this is the country region property in HubSpot. By default, it's a single line text field, and people could enter, let's say they take the United Kingdom, they might enter UK, they might enter Great Britain, they might enter England. So it's going to be really hard if you then want to split down like deals or sales by country or by region. So if you think about it in advance, it allows you to, okay, maybe let's have a drop down property for that so that you force people to pick one option. And it's going to make your life a lot easier later down the line, because there's only one option. There's not going to be multiple bars for the same country. So I think that's a really important takeaway from this.
And I think with that country, I think it was country or industry in HubSpot. I think when you first get the HubSpot CRM, it's a single line text field, but you can actually convert it to a drop down if you haven't yet used it. But once you've used it, that's kind of where I get messy.
Right.
So if you haven't used the country one and you're wanting to, I recommend just going straight in there and just changing that straight away, because there's just no reason why new countries will be added in or anything like that. So why not? It should be default in my opinion. But I don't know why it's that way. But yeah, along with that, just I think a first step with data is just know where your data is coming from. If you're new and you're starting, what we really recommend is just identify all the different ways your data is coming through. And Katie's mentioned all the different ones. Integrations might be one of them as well, if you have like native integrations or custom integrations built in. So just keep a record of all the different ways data might be coming through from various teams, and then understand what happens after that data is coming. Like, are you using it to automate specific things to make the data more standardized? So yeah, just have all of that in the background so that you know the data is coming in, it's clean and it's standard, and it's everyone knows what they mean as well.
Yeah, at Boom, we use a tool which is free, just called Whimsical, and it allows you to create flowchart visualizations. So that's one of the first things that we'll always do, is map out exactly what sources your data is coming in from and how you're going to make sure that it's standardized.
Yeah.
But another point on that is that you can use workflows to automate a lot of that data cleanup. So you don't have to sit there manually going through records. If you've got Operations Hub, you can use that to format your data. So for example, capitalizing first names, making sure that your date properties are in a standard format, making sure that numbers like phone numbers are formatted properly. So that can definitely take the burden off of somebody sitting there going through it manually. But even if you don't have Operations Hub, there are other things that you can do. So for example, assigning a region based on somebody's country, or assigning a contact owner based on the industry that a lead has come from. So there's definitely things you can do to automate that.
Another thing that could be useful is if you are setting up new custom properties, you have rules that you can add to them so that people don't put in random information, especially if it's like a single line text or a number field. You can set up rules now whereby, for example, if it's like a phone number field or something like that, just limit it to like maximum 10 digits or something like that. As an example, I don't know if that's right. But yeah, you can do all these sort of rules now in HubSpot to make sure that when someone puts information in, it's in a correct format.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I saw one the other day as well. So if you're having a date property, you can set it so that the date can only be a working day, or it can only be a date in the future. So for example, like deal close date, you're not going to want people to put that in for the past. So definitely one to bear in mind.
Amazing. So yeah, lots of things to think about with data, but as we know, our reports are only as good as the data we have in the system. So sorry, just really keep that in mind and make sure that you set up your processes properly so that everything's being registered and saved and named and formatted properly. Okay, moving on, let's talk a bit more about the reports library in HubSpot. So I'm actually just going to jump over to a test or demo HubSpot portal that I've got. Okay, so this is our demo portal. Now I'm on the wrong page, so let me just jump over. So you'll see with reporting, as Katie mentioned, there's a few different types of custom reports that you can build. But the really good thing about HubSpot is they love templates, and they have templates for pretty much anything, reports included. So if you are brand new to building reports in HubSpot, we recommend having a look at the template library first, just to see if what you want is already in there. So you don't even have to worry about building them. It's just literally clicking and saving it to the right dashboard. But I'll show you the different ways you can find that information. So the first thing, which is super, super useful for sales, is the sales analytics tools. They've actually put it in two different places. So you can either find it through reports and analytics tools, or you can also go to the sales dropdown and click on sales analytics here, and it takes you to the same thing, which is actually what we're looking at right now. So as you can see, this is a collection of sales reports that HubSpot has pre-built for you based on best practices. So on the left side here, you can see different categories of the types of sales reports that you can see in HubSpot. And with any of these reports that you're looking at, they will automatically pull in data that already exists in your CRM. So you know, so you have a preview straight away of what type of reports you can make use of straight away. So because it's a demo portal, we don't have too much data, but I'm just going to pick something that has some of that information. So as an example, Katie will be talking a bit more about this type of report. But for example, if you did want to look at forecasting reports, you do have that here. If you want to have reports against the goal, you can see that there. In terms of reps and teams, you can look at things like sales activity if you're wanting to track team activity and things like that. You've got so many different reports that you can view straight off the analytics tools, which is amazing. You've got a bunch of deal outcome ones here as well. So the good thing about these analytics tools is even though you can probably just come in here and look at the reports you want, if you did want to save this into a group of specific reports in a dashboard, you can also do that. So you can see there's the save report button on the top right corner here. The reason there's two options is because in this particular one, there's a chart and then there's a table at the bottom. So if you like to save that to a dashboard, which I'll show you shortly, you just click on the one you want, and then you can add it to either a new or existing dashboard. So yeah, if you haven't experienced this tool before, I recommend just going straight into it and just having a look, because you've really got some interesting reports in there. And sometimes you don't know what's possible, and just going in here will really show you interesting reports that will give you a lot of insight on how you can improve your sales processes as well. Now, moving on to dashboards, which you can find under reports and dashboards. The way I like to think about dashboards is basically a group of reports for a specific purpose. So from the sales side, really common types of dashboards that we see with our clients are things like sales manager dashboards or individual sales rep dashboards. So from the sales manager side, a sales manager might probably want to see team performance. So things like making sure the sales reps are hitting their target activity goals, so number of calls, for example, per day. It could be just measuring how many deals or amount of revenue that they've closed in a month by team, and you can kind of track that by individual reps as well. So you might have a dashboard for that purpose. Then you might have maybe an individual sales rep dashboard, which has a collection of reports for their individual performance, so that they can just go in there and look at how they're doing currently and then just measure that against their goals. So that's the way I like to think about dashboards. And with dashboards, it's really important to understand what the purpose of that dashboard is first, before you actually start adding reports in there, because otherwise you'll get dashboards with like 200 reports in there and it gets crazy long. And to be honest, if it gets to that length, nobody's really going to read every single report. So keep that collection small and concise and specific so that you don't have, a never-ending scroll of reports. So couple of things to know with reports as well is you've got some filtering options here, which can help you filter by date ranges, contact owners, things like that. And this filter here will basically override all the current filters on the existing reports in the dashboard. Another cool feature is you can add image, text, and video content into your dashboards as well. So let's say you want to have a bit of text on the top here to give dashboard some context of like what it's for, you can do that. You want to put your business logo in there, that's fine as well. You've got external content, and this is usually very specific to Google, but you've got other content options as well. You will have some of our clients have use cases where they are storing data in other tools like Google Sheets, and they might just want to have that accessible in HubSpot. So what you can do is actually you can pick out a Google Sheet, choose a section of that sheet, and pull that data into your dashboards, just so you can see that information alongside all the other reports that you've got in your CRM. And then finally, a really useful thing for dashboards is you've got this emailing option as well. So let's say you've got some C-suite members that want to get reports from HubSpot without actually going into HubSpot. This is a really good way to do it. So you can set these as recurring emails. You can update the frequency of these ones. You can set a time, and you can also choose to have these reports or dashboards sent as either an embedded email or an attachment in a PDF style. So once you've set this up, that person who's requested reports will basically receive a rundown of the entire dashboard without having to log into HubSpot, which can be really useful. In terms of creating dashboards, you've got a few options. So if you want to start from scratch, that's perfectly fine. You've got this. But like I said, HubSpot loves templates. And if you have a rough idea of what role the dashboard is for, you can use that and kind of scroll through their library here to see any of these that might be useful. So from a sales perspective, you can see they've got a sales manager one, a sales one, and a sales opportunity one, and also a sales rep. So if you click into any of these dashboards, it basically already comes with a collection of this number of reports that are relevant to this role that they've mentioned here. So with the sales manager as an example, it will describe to you what sort of reports you can build, or it will come with. If I click next, I can just keep that name. set the accessibility, create the dashboard. And if I click go to dashboard, it will then take me to their newly built dashboard, and you can see all the numbers upload straight in as well. So really useful if you don't really know where to start. Now, from the reporting perspective, so let's say you're building it from scratch, you basically just see blank squares in here. If you create a report in terms of the library, because Katie will talk about these shortly, you can see there's in our portal anyway, there's 244 template reports that you can pick out and add to your dashboards as well. So there's quite a lot in here. So you do have some really useful filtering options on the left side here. So you can either filter it from just a text search. You can do it through data sources as well. So let's say I only want to look at reports that are about deals. I can choose that filter, and you can see HubSpot's narrowed it down to 69 reports about deals. And then from there, you can just pick out the ones you want. Now, the last one is visualization. So let's say I only want to see deals in a pie chart format. I can click that, and it will show me their reports that have both. So yeah, you can kind of mix and match it around. And if you're brand new to building reports, we usually recommend just starting off here. With the reports in their library as well, sometimes there are minor customizations that you can make to them. So if it's not exactly what you need, you can still use them, make some tweaks to it, and then add it to your dashboard. But yeah, that's a quick overview of how it works. Katie, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add into it, or
no, I think this is always my go-to starting point. If I'm not quite sure, 90% of the time there'll be a template for what I'm looking for. So don't overlook it. I'd say have a good look through there first, and then go on to the custom report builder if you can't find what you want.
Thanks. Yeah, amazing. So even when we work with some clients and they're not sure what they want, what we usually just recommend is just use one of these templates to start with, and then you might start thinking of a few more that you want, and we can just add them in after.
Definitely.
Cool. Let's move on to custom reports. And Katie, over to you. I will stop sharing my screen and hand that over.
Great, thank you. So let me just share. Perfect. So when we are thinking about custom reports, so the way that I got to this screen, just to recap, is if you go to reports on the main navigation bar, down to reports again, and then click create report. And then I just selected custom report builder. And this is the page that you should see. So the first thing that it's going to ask you to do is to choose your data sources. This is really important. I think a lot of people forget to actually customize the data source. So if I want to create a report on deals, make sure you choose deals as your primary data source. The reason being is that if you just keep it as the default, which is contacts, it will only show deals that are associated to contacts, if that makes sense. So if you haven't got contacts associated with your deals, it won't show the deals. And then a lot of people saying, why is it not showing the accurate data? And it's just because the primary data source isn't right. It's
very common that when a report doesn't look right, it's because of the data source.
Exactly. Yeah. So make sure you pick the right primary data source, and then you can start to join and bring in your secondary data sources. And you can have up to 5, so you can get quite comprehensive with your reports. So for example, I might want to have a report that shows deals against their associated contacts. I might also want to then pull in information about the calls that I've made or tasks that have been completed. You can also pull in information about quotes or line items as well if you're reporting on revenue. So yeah, feel free to take up to 5, as many as you like, and then click next.
I will say, if you've picked the wrong ones, you can still edit them when you go next. So
that's a really good point. I do that all the time, and then I forget. But if you edit data sources, you can change it. So don't panic if you do think, actually, I need to pull in activities or something. In here, it's then just a case of dragging the relevant information to the X and Y axes. So as long as you've got a clear idea of the report you want to create and what properties you need to pull into that report, it should be fairly straightforward. I think that's where a lot of people get a little bit stuck, because they're not sure what properties the information is stored in. So I think as long as you've planned that out before, you should be fine. So let's say I wanted to create a report showing the count of deals by, let's say, the deal stage. All I have to do is search for the relevant property, so deal stage, drag that along to the relevant axes, and then HubSpot will actually refresh as you go. As you can see here, it's got tons and tons of deal stages in here across multiple pipelines. So that's where our filters come in. So if I change from the configure tab to the filters tab, I can then add in a filter to say, okay, I only want to look at one particular pipeline. let's say I only want to look at the sales pipeline. And that's just going to narrow that right down. So now it's a lot easier to visualize. You can then break these columns down so it splits it into different colors. So this might be useful to look at deal owners. It might be the deal type. It could be, for example, the region or the country that that contact is in. So you can break down information here as well. If you're looking at a date range report as well, another useful thing is the compare by, because this allows you to see, for example, month on month or week on week performance. So this is really useful for reporting over time. Once you've done that, just choose the way that you'd like to visualize the chart. So as Clarinda mentioned, there's a ton in here. You might want to have a pie chart. You might want to have a line chart for looking at trends over time. A good tip, if you're not sure, use the smart chart feature. And what this allows you to do is just click the magic wand, and HubSpot will take into account the different properties that you've added into the X and Y, and it will recommend the best way to visualize that data for you. So if you're not sure, click on the magic wand and it'll do it for you. But once you've done that, you can then save the report and either add it to a dashboard or just keep it off of a dashboard and save it for later as well. But yeah, that's essentially all there is to it. So what I wanted to do now is just dive into a couple of different use cases and show you a few different things that you can do that you might not have thought about before. The first one that I wanted to show you is this report here, which is just looking at the closed won deals per month. So as you'll see on the x-axis, I've just added in the close date. This is a default property that HubSpot will capture as soon as you move a deal into the closed won stage. And if I click on the pencil, I can also change the frequency in which I'm visualizing that. So daily might be a little bit too much and you've probably got loads of data points. So
That's actually a really good tip because it's hidden, isn't it?
It's so hidden, and loads of people are like, I don't want to see all of this data. I don't need to see it day by day. So click on the pencil and you can change the frequency. Here I've got the sum and of the amount, but you can actually change it. You might want to see, for example, the average closed won deal amount per month. So you can just click on the pencil again and change the aggregation.
Another really good tip there.
Yeah, exactly. Another hidden one that lots of people don't realize. So I'm showing the sum, but you might want to look at average. And then I've used the breakdown function here that I mentioned to split by deal type. And again, this is another default property in HubSpot, and it allows you to record new business versus existing business with current customers. So you'll see here, it's split that into two. So orange is existing and then blue is new business. So that's another helpful way to visualize data. But you could break down by sales reps or region, whatever it is that you like. On chart settings, I've also added a monthly goal as well. This is another one that I think is quite hidden.
Yes, yeah.
We mentioned this in the marketing in
yes,
part
we did.
weeks ago, but what it does is it's just added a little grey line across the report there. I've just added in a monthly goal of 50,000 and it just plots that on the report. So it's quite useful because you can compare your monthly performance against that goal. The only slight caveat is that the goal does have to be the same every single month or every single quarter. So if it does change, let's say you've got a different goal per quarter, your best bet is to probably create different reports and just have them side by side. Or you can use the forecasting tool to enter your goals in there. And then in sales analytics, there's a good report which shows quota attainment as well. But I thought it was worth mentioning you can apply goals to custom reports as well. So that is the first example I wanted to share with you. The second is more looking at activity. So as long as you've got your email and your calendar connected to HubSpot, you're going to be able to track all of your different activity types. So meetings that you've had with prospects, emails that you've exchanged, calls that you've made, tasks that you've completed, the list goes on. So this is one that I built just using the single object reporter. So I've just pulled through the person that the activity is assigned to, the activity type, so is it an email, is it a call, and then the number of activities. And here you'll just see it split that down by color, and it's got emails, email replies, meetings, etc. And then at the bottom you've also got a breakdown of how many emails have been sent. If you click on that, it'll also pull up a history of all of those specific contacts. Again, you can add your filters in here as well. So I've filtered it to just this month, and I've only pulled through certain activity types. So you can pick from, as I said, calls, conversation sessions, even things like LinkedIn messages and postal mail, because you can log them against a contact record. So however you choose to log that activity is how HubSpot will split that out.
Yeah.
So that's another one. And this is available in the sales analytics tool that Clarinda showed you earlier. So
yeah, HubSpot does have most of this in their library.
Exactly. So it's an easy one you can just save and customize, which is exactly what I've done here. Next one I wanted to show you as well, another one from sales analytics under the forecasts and pipeline section. And this is the weighted forecast. So I often get a lot of questions when people are setting up their pipeline saying, what is the probability that you see alongside each stage? What does that actually mean? And this is essentially, let's say you had £1,000 in a certain deal stage and your probability is set at 10%. HubSpot will take the weighted amount of that, and it's the percentage of how much you've got in that pipeline stage. So if you had £1,000 and it was 10%, it would be £100. So HubSpot is basically taking your weighted total and putting that into a pipeline here, and you can see that against the deal owner. So I've just created some test deals. I've put them against Clarinda and myself, and you can see here if I hover over it how much is in each stage of the pipeline. So here Clarinda's got 9,000 in presentation scheduled, and then she's got 20,000 closed won for the month of June.
Yeah, and that is measured by the predicted close date that the sales rep would have put in there, or the one that HubSpot automatically puts in as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's really important to make sure that they are putting in the right close dates, because otherwise it won't pull through. And a lot of people
or
say,
as close as you know what it could close
exactly.
by. Yeah.
And you can always update that close date as well. Yeah. So even if it is just a wild guess to begin with, you can refine that as you start to learn more about that deal. On the right hand side, what I do really like about sales analytics is that if you're not sure what any of these reports mean as well, it will give you a bit of a description of the report and exactly what properties are used in it, so you can see where that information is coming from. But again, I've just applied some more filters to this. So I've just pulled through specific reps, but you could also filter based on teams as well. So you might want to look at everybody who's in the sales team or everybody who's in the account management team. And again, you can filter that by pipeline. So I've just added a filter for sales pipeline. You can also add your own custom filters as well. So this allows you to select from a range of default and custom properties that you might have created before. You can also view this performance over time as well. So this is looking at the whole of the month. Frequency is daily, but again, you can change the frequency in here and you can plot how that weighted pipeline is looking over time. And again, you can compare by date range too.
So many of them. It's just really important to make sure you know what you need and not just chuck everything into the dashboard.
Exactly. There are tons that you can use. So I definitely think sales analytics is probably one of the most underrated tools. You can find most things in.
I agree.
The last one I wanted to show you as well, also from sales analytics, is this historical snapshots one. So let's say you've got a scenario where you wanted to look at how much you had sat in your pipeline at a given date. So let's say last month or last year, and you wanted to compare that to how much you have in your pipeline now. But obviously now your pipeline's updated. So how are you going to get that historical data? So that's where this report comes in, because I can see, okay, I want to look at exactly what I had in each stage of my pipeline on this day last year, so that you can compare it to this year. So you can see, are you generating more pipeline value over time? Again, you've got all of the same filters in terms of the frequency, who's included in the report, and the sales pipelines. But I just find this really useful because you can see here it's pulling through per month exactly how many deals I had, what stage they were in, and what the monetary value of those deals was as well. So you can see how it's changing over time. So those are the key sort of standard reports that I wanted to show you today. But there are some more advanced reports which I wanted to also talk to you about as well for those of you who have an enterprise subscription. And that is mainly revenue analytics, deal splits, and then also journey analytics, which I did mention at the beginning as well. So the first one that I wanted to share with you is revenue analytics. So what this allows you to do is, if you are working from a subscription-based model, it allows you to track recurring revenue. So you can have a look at over time, are you upgrading the amount that you're selling for? Are you having downgrades? Are you tracking your churn, etc.? So once
quick note, you can find this under the analytics tools drop down. The reports drop down.
That's a good point. Yeah. So yeah, it is in beta as well.
Yes.
So just bear
It's a
that.
work in progress.
The work in progress. You've got to enable it first, but essentially once it is enabled, HubSpot will automatically create some different properties in your account. So those are the recurring revenue amount, the recurring revenue deal type. So that could be new business, it could be renewal, could be an upgrade or a downgrade. The recurring revenue inactive date, so when that recurring revenue is no longer being collected. And then also the recurring revenue inactive reason. So is it because it's churned? Is it because it's a renewal? Have they downgraded or upgraded? So once those properties are created, the only downside is that it is a little bit manual at the moment, because the sales team have basically got to go in and manually enter in the values for each of those properties. So you'll have to manually enter the amount of recurring revenue, when that started and ended.
So
yeah.
Sorry, Kate, just to cut in there, just to keep in mind, if your sales team is currently recording their recurring revenue just through the deal amount property or through the line items, that does not affect this report. So you will need to fill in extra data into those newly created reports to be able to generate this. So there's pros and cons to this, but it is work in progress.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just see it as extra admin, but potentially you could use a workflow if you really wanted to copy over your amount or ARR into the recurring revenue amount, so that you don't have to sort of enter it in manually. But I think it is really useful, because you can see here over time it's split it out by color, and you can look at existing recurring revenue, what's new this month, and then also any lost recurring revenue. So for example, if somebody has churned or they've not renewed their contract with you, and if you click on that, it will give you a history of that deal as well, and exactly what it is. So this is really useful for people who are obviously working on a subscription-based model, have renewals,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
I will say that there are some filtering restrictions still at the moment. For example, you can see with pipelines, you can only, that's kind of the only thing you can filter it by, along with date ranges and frequency, but anything beyond that, you don't really have that much. Also, these reports are so separate from the current deal reports you can create that sometimes if you didn't need to merge that information for any reason, it does get a bit restrictive, basically. Yeah.
I think it's a good starting point, but it's got a little,
it's a work in progress. And
you
know, we've had some clients that have a look into it, and some of them think it's enough, and some of them still, you know, can't use it because it just doesn't yet give you the data you need. What we found with some of our clients is there are workarounds to building something similar like this without having to use this report yet. So we have worked with some clients whereby we would use things like Operations Hub, custom coded workflows, custom objects to build something that's a bit more robust and more enriched data. So for example, if you did want to combine recurring revenue with one-time or one-off payment deals, you'd need to do that in a very customized way. So there are workarounds, but they are probably more expensive solutions. So it really depends on your use case. If this is all you need, that's great. But if you did need really, really advanced ones, I think HubSpot's working towards it, but we're not quite there yet.
Definitely. Yeah. If you are interested as well, I mentioned that it's in beta. If you want to have a look at the betas and opt your portal in, if you just click on your name icon or your picture in the top right corner, scroll down to where it says product updates in here. Here's a history of all of the product updates that HubSpot has released, and under early access, if you click on betas, as long as you're a super admin, you'll be able to either opt your user in or your entire portal just by clicking join beta. So just a tip there, if you didn't know about that, just click join beta and then join. Cool. So the next report as well that I wanted to talk about is deal splits. Now, very often we'll have clients where multiple salespeople are working on a deal, particularly for very large deals, and they might want to allocate credit between two users. And prior to deal splits, you couldn't really do that. So you'd have to have multiple different properties. But if you are having multiple users involved in deals, as long as you're a super admin, you can activate deal splits within settings. And this basically allows users to share a percentage of the amount of that deal. And that will affect the amount that is in their sales forecast as well. So once you have activated it, as long as you've got edit permissions, you can go in and add a split to a deal. So if I go in to the deal section in HubSpot, let's just pick a tested deal here. On the left-hand side, you'll just want to scroll down to where it says deal splits, and this will essentially enable you to add that. So as long as it has an amount in there, so let's just put in 2,000. I can now add the users that I want to split that between, and it will basically allocate the credit and the revenue between the users that you enter. So in terms of the reports, HubSpot, once you've activated it, it will create a property called deal split owner and also deal split amount. So in this report here, you can see that I've just created a test one for Clarinda and I. We've got deal split owner along the left, and then we've got deal split amount at the bottom. And this is basically just allowing us to see for deals that we've collaborated on exactly how much we've got in the pipeline and at what stage that is. So for example, what's in stage 1, what's in qualified to buy. And if you click on that, it will also tell you exactly which deal that relates to as well.
I believe this is like a separate data source as well, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so just keep that in mind too.
Yeah, but it is only available to enterprise users. So just want to keep in mind, if you're not seeing it in your portal, that might be why. And the last one I wanted to share with you is actually a very exciting one. This is available at the moment to Marketing Hub Enterprise users, which is the customer journey reports reporting feature. In here, of course, you can pull through a lot of marketing. If you watch part 1, you'll have seen that I demonstrated where you can pull in things like life cycle stage, ads, interactions. But a recent update that HubSpot's just released is that you can now pull in deal stages into your report. I think this is really useful for viewing conversion rates, particularly when people aren't moving through deal stages exactly in order from one to the other, because the limitation of the previous funnel report, sometimes deals wouldn't show. And that's because they might have skipped a stage. So if you moved it straight from the first stage to close 1, it wouldn't show in that funnel report because it hasn't passed through all of the stages in order. So it's sort of mucking up people's conversion rates. So it's very accurate data without having to create multiple variations of that funnel report for all of the different scenarios that people might have entered the deals and moved them through the stages. So what I really like about this is that you can mark stages as optional, and it will show you, if I hover over it here, people that have gone straight from, for example, scoping to closed 1, or people that have gone from solutions proposed straight to statement of work sent while skipping a stage. So in here, all I've done is just go onto the sales pipeline. I've dragged in each different stage of my pipeline into here. And then all of the stages between 1 and 5, I've just marked as optional. And the way that you can do that is just click on the 3 dots here and say mark stage as optional or mark stage as required. And this just basically generates this nice sort of Sankey diagram here, where it shows you exactly how long it took people to complete that journey, what's the conversion rate between each stage, and how long are people roughly taking in each stage of that entire journey. But it's just really useful for people who are skipping stages because you've got a clearer picture of the conversion rates. So yeah, just another one that I wanted to show you as well. I also recently saw on LinkedIn a use case where people wanted to see the conversion rate between 2 different pipelines. So for example, if you've got a pipeline for renewals and then you've got a separate pipeline for your new business sales, and you wanted to look at the conversion rate between closed 1 on your sales pipeline to renewed, you can actually add in deal stages from multiple pipelines into here. So it's very useful for looking at conversion rates for different stages. Here's the example that I've just taken from LinkedIn as well here. So they've got a sales pipeline and an onboarding pipeline, and they're looking at conversion rates between the 2 different ones. So I think it's definitely got a lot of potential. This one is also in beta. It was only released last year. So HubSpot's adding more and more to it over time. But it's just important to keep in mind it is only available to marketing enterprise users at the moment.
For anyone who is quite new to sales pipelines in general, just keep in mind these deal stages are just example deal stages. And if you are using HubSpot for the first time, it does come with some standard deal stages, which you can then customize to your own sales process.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Katie. So yeah, so many reports you can build, as you can see, which is very, very cool. I'm just going to share my screen again. And oh, all right. Yes, so that was all the advanced reports. Well, it's not all of them, but it's just some of them that you can build with the current advanced reporting tools available in HubSpot. So hopefully you found any of those useful. I think with reports, if you are new to it, like we said, just start easy, know what you need to build, and then keep going from there. It's kind of a practice makes perfect, although there's really no perfect, I will say. But you just get better and better at it as when you use the tool. It's really useful to be able to watch and see what's possible, but it really just increases your skill in building when you're actually building it, as you do with most skills, really. But yeah, moving on, I've identified a couple of common reporting pitfalls that are really more data pitfalls than reporting pitfalls, but I think it's really important to understand that this is the foundation of the quality of reports when it comes to data. And here are common things from the sales perspective that does happen a lot that can result in your reports being not as accurate as you'd like it to be. So the first one is too much flexibility in creating properties in HubSpot. So we have seen this happen a lot with a lot of sales teams, especially when it comes to bigger companies where you have lots of sales reps and they have a lot of access to everything. So just keeping in mind, it's good to know what sort of access levels your sales reps have with the system. So there should be a setting in there where you can edit the ability to create new custom properties, as an example. So a common thing that happens is when everyone in the system has access to create properties, they might not know that certain properties already exist that they could use, and then because they couldn't find it, they would maybe just create a new one that actually means the same thing and then put their own data in there, which can just kind of muddle up everything, because as you imagine, when you create a report, you can only pick one rather than a multitude of different things that have different values in them. So a really good example with this is lead source. So we do find a lot of our clients, we have marketing teams that have a property that they're using to track lead source. They might even be using HubSpot standard original source property to create reports. And then on the sales side, when sales reps call or email their prospects, they might have that question of, oh, where did you hear about us? And then they have their answer. If the sales rep isn't aware that that property already exists, they might create a new property asking for lead source and put their own values in. And you can imagine when you build that report, you wouldn't know which property you need to pick because there's two buckets of information that are actually the same thing. So that's a really common use case, but I'm sure there's lots of other ones that you'll be able to think of. But yeah, just making sure that everyone knows what they should be recording their data in is super important, so that people know that they need to know what to prioritize and where their data should be stored at every single point of that buyer journey. The second pitfall is just lack of training and process, which kind of ties back to that first point anyway. If every sales rep knows where they need to be collecting the data, storing the data, and what happens to the data once it's been stored, it's more likely that they will do it correctly. So putting things in place, like, for example, in a deal stage, having required properties at every stage is a really good way to just kind of safeguard that. So what I'm referring to with that one is when you set up your sales pipeline in HubSpot, you do have the ability to require sales reps to input specific information into specific properties before they're allowed to move a deal from one stage to another. So just having these things in place and then training them on how to use that can really help make sure that your data is standardized. Finally, lack of consistent data. So kind of ties back anyway, it's all about data cleanliness and data maintenance, really. But the more consistent your data is and the more robust it is, the better reports you can build. So just make sure you know how each, you know where your data is coming from and what's being done to those records that are coming into the system as well, and make sure they're all standardized. If you are a beginner with building sales reports or a beginner with HubSpot specifically, these are a few things to think of, which we've kind of talked about through the whole webinar anyway, but just as a refresher, if you don't know where to start with sales reports, Sales Analytics Tools is the best way to just kind of look and get some ideas and some inspiration on the type of reports that will answer the questions that you have. Now, in terms of knowing what reports exactly you want to build, we usually recommend starting by knowing the purpose of the dashboard that you want to build first. So as an example, the sales manager, the sales rep, the forecasting type dashboards that you want to build. Think of the purpose of that dashboard first, and then from there, figure out what reports need to be in there to answer the questions that sales role or that dashboard would need to have. So for example, if you have a sales manager that needs a sales manager dashboard, what sort of answers would he want? So how is my team performing? Is someone falling behind? So what sort of reports can you build that can answer those questions? From there, you can figure out what data points need to be in those reports, and then you can build the report from there. So that just really makes it really organized. When you're building a report, you know exactly why you're building it, and you're not just building it for the sake of it. And that can help you maintain your dashboards really well over time. And then, of course, just making sure you've got the right restrictions put in place so that people, only the right people can build the reports that they need as well. That's really important. And then finally, you always have support when it comes to building your reports. You're not alone. So in this next slide here, I've got some resources in here. Most of them are free for you to help you along the way as you're learning how to build this report. So the first one is the HubSpot Academy. So there's a link in there. If you are in your portal and click on just next to your logo, if you click drop down, there's a HubSpot Academy button on there, so you can go directly through your portal as well. But it basically comes with a whole bunch of online courses built by HubSpot that teaches you about pretty much everything, like marketing, sales, CRM, reports, SEO. So yeah, have a browse, and they're really, really well designed and well executed. So at BBD Boom, we have a ton of certifications as well because we have to, but we do find them very, very useful. It's definitely helped us do our job better. So
there is a really good certification. It's a very long one, but it's just called reporting. I think it's about 8 or 10 hours. So you might want to split it up over a series of a few days and just do half an hour each day, but it really does go into a lot of detail as well.
Okay, so like Katie was saying, there was that really good Academy resource. So just go to the Academy and just search reports, and you should be able to find it. And now, along with that, we've got some support options as well. So if you're familiar with the HubSpot portal, you'll notice that there is the help button in purple in the bottom right corner of your portal. So in there, you have access to their chat, their calling function, and their email function, which is basically direct access to the HubSpot support team. They are honestly amazing. They have the best customer service I've ever experienced compared to lots of other softwares I've ever used. So my personal favorite is the chat function. So you basically always have access to an actual human being, which is great, first of all. But these customer service reps are actually trained to specialize in specific features. So you'll notice that when you go into their chat, they'll ask you like, oh, what question do you have? And then based on your answer, they'll actually direct you to the rep that is specialized in that feature. Along with that, they actually have access to your portal, which hopefully most of you will see is a good thing, because what you can actually do with that is if you share the link to what you're building, so let's say you're building a report and you just can't figure it out, if you share that link of your report to them, they can see what you're doing, and they can even access it and help you kind of tweak things as well. So yeah, if you did need help with reporting, I highly recommend the chat function. Super helpful. I saw someone's raised their hand, Ellen. Would you be able to drop your message in the Q&A so we can see what question you got for us? Because I don't know if we can unlock the conversation. So while you do that, I'm just going to keep talking, but once we've got your question, then we'll try our best to answer that. So along with that, we also have the knowledge-based articles. So knowledge-based articles is, if you're familiar with HubSpot support anyway, if you just Google something about HubSpot, chances are the Google search results will take you to a knowledge-based article. But HubSpot has been really, really good at documenting how to use every single feature in there, and they are constantly updating it as they update their features as well. So if you want to learn about, let's say, I don't understand what this value in this property, in this HubSpot standard property means, they have a knowledge-based article that will explain that very, very clearly. So you've got that as a resource. And then you've got HubSpot forums. So with HubSpot forums, it's in community.hubspot.com. So if you've got like a use case specific question and maybe the HubSpot support team is not available, you might think that your use case is really unique, but sometimes you might Google it and find that someone has the exact same question, which I do find very often happens to me. So rather than going to the community.hubspot.com, though, I recommend just Googling it, because I find that works better for me. Like, you get the result faster. So yeah, you do have that as well. Then let me just have a look at the question. Oh, Alan says he can't see my screen.
Oh, that's strange. I've got it on mine.
All right, let me just reshare it again, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Okay, I've reshared it. Let me know if you can still see it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is being recorded. So if you did want to just review that last bit, oh, cool. Amazing. All right. Thanks, Helen. Okay, so top 3 resources. So the top 3 are free. The fourth one would be to speak to a HubSpot solutions partner. So if you are looking for something more strategic, so let's say rather than just needing help with a report, you actually need to understand how your data is coming in, how to configure that, how to train your sales team, and then from there, advice on like the report. So it's like a whole thing, lots of backstory. The best bet would be to go to a HubSpot solutions partner to help you figure that out from the very beginning. So if you did need help from a HubSpot partner, we'd recommend going to the HubSpot Marketplace solution. So I put the link in there. And basically that will take you to a library of all the HubSpot solutions partners, including BBD Boom, in that list. Obviously, if you'd like to work with us, we're not going to complain, but we just want to let you know that there are options on there. So feel free to just have a browse and pick the one that you think is most suitable to you, talk with a few partners and just figure out who could best suit the problems that you have or can help you solve those problems. But obviously that would be a paid solution. So you've got all these resources there. And yeah, if you after this webinar you want to start building, just keep in mind that you've got all these options. Right. All right, let's go to the next slide. My doc's moved again. 1 moment, sorry. Okay, well, that's the Q&A section really anyway. So it looks like there might be one more question. So I'm just going to leave this slide here while I check that out. No more questions. Okay, no worries. Does anyone else have any questions? If you do, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. But if you did want to reach out to Boom for any reason, or if you have any questions after the webinar, we've got some details in there. So we've got a phone number. You can chat to Adam as well, who's our co-founder, and our website if you just want to learn more about us. But yeah, like I said, you've got those resources as well. So lots of different options. Feel free to go wherever you want to find the information you need. And feel free to add us on LinkedIn if you'd like to. First name, last name, you can search us up really easily. But that pretty much concludes today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Like I said before, if you did want to revisit this webinar, we will have a recording of this, hopefully along with the second bit as well, on our website. And if you've registered for the webinar, I believe you'll get an email with a link to the recording afterwards as well, so you can access it that way. Otherwise, just go straight to the website, click on webinars, and you'll find it there. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's been really fun chatting with you, Katie, about reports.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
HubSpot nerds. So yeah, hopefully we'll catch you on the next one. I don't really know exactly what that is first, but I'm sure you get an email about that. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.